The morning sun cast long shadows across the mining colony on Kepler 442b as Katie Morrison adjusted her work helmet. At 16, she had already spent 2 years working the deep tunnels alongside her father, Pete Morrison. The pay was good, and someone had to help support their small family after her mother died in the transport accident. "Stay close today, Katie," Pete said, checking his equipment one more time. "The new tunnel section makes me nervous. Too many strange readings on the scanners." Katie nodded and followed her father into the dark entrance of Mine Shaft 7. The colony had been peaceful for 3 years now, ever since the Vorthak Empire arrived and declared humans under their protection. Most people seemed happy enough with the arrangement. The aliens provided advanced technology and protection from other hostile species. In return, humans mined rare minerals and followed Vorthak laws. But Katie had noticed things. Strange shipments leaving the colony at night. Workers who went to the medical center and never came back the same. Her friend Lisa Chen, who worked in communications, had been acting worried for weeks but would not say why. Deep in the tunnel, Katie and her father worked side by side, their tools cutting through solid rock to reach the precious ore beneath. The work was hard but honest. Katie liked the simple rhythm of it. Chip away the stone, load the cart, move to the next section. It gave her time to think and dream about maybe leaving the colony someday. Around noon, Pete went back to the surface to file their progress report. Katie continued working alone, her headlamp cutting through the darkness. That was when she heard voices echoing from a side tunnel she had never noticed before. Curiosity got the better of her. Katie set down her tools and crept toward the sound. The voices spoke in the clicking, harsh language of the Vorthaks. She had learned enough of it over the years to understand basic words. What she saw made her stomach turn cold with horror. A group of Vorthak soldiers stood around large metal containers. Inside the containers, floating in some kind of blue liquid, were human brains. Not just brains, but entire nervous systems, carefully removed and kept alive by alien technology. Labels on the containers showed names Katie recognized. Workers who had disappeared over the past months. One of the Vorthaks was explaining to another how they harvested the neural tissue. Humans, it turned out, had a unique brain structure that made them perfect for bioenhancement experiments. The Vorthaks had been secretly collecting human subjects for months, telling the colony leaders that the missing people had been transferred to other worlds. Katie backed away slowly, trying not to make any noise. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure the aliens would hear it. She had to tell someone. She had to warn the colony. But as she turned to run, her boot kicked a loose stone. The sound echoed through the tunnel like a gunshot. The Vorthak voices stopped immediately. Katie heard the heavy footsteps of soldiers moving in her direction. She ran as fast as she could through the dark tunnels, her headlamp bouncing wildly as she tried to find her way back to the main shaft. She burst out into the sunlight, gasping for breath. Her father was waiting for her, along with Jake Harrison, the colony's defense commander. Jake was a former military man who had come to Kepler 442b looking for a quiet life. He still carried himself like a soldier, though, and Katie had always felt safe knowing he was around. "Katie, what's wrong?" Pete asked, seeing the panic in his daughter's eyes. Between gasps, Katie told them everything she had seen. The containers, the brains, the horrible truth about what happened to the missing colonists. Jake's face went pale as he listened. "How many soldiers did you see?" Jake asked. 6, maybe 7, but Commander Harrison, there might be more. They've been doing this for months." Jake grabbed his communicator and tried to contact his security team. Nothing but static came back. He tried again. Still nothing. "They're jamming our communications," he said grimly. "Katie, you need to get to your father's house and stay there. Pete, gather as many people as you can and get them to the community center. I'll try to organize some kind of defense." But it was already too late. Vorthak ships appeared in the sky, above the colony like dark thunderclouds. Not the small transport ships the colonists were used to seeing, but massive warships bristling with weapons. Landing craft descended from them, carrying hundreds of soldiers in black armor. The attack was swift and brutal. The Vorthaks had been planning this for weeks. They knew exactly where to strike to cripple the colony's defenses. Jake's small security force fought bravely, but they were outnumbered 10-1. Katie ran toward her home, but Vorthak soldiers blocked her path. She turned and ran the other way, but more soldiers appeared. They herded her and other colonists toward the main square. Like cattle, she saw her father in the crowd, blood running down his face from a head wound. He tried to reach her, but a Vorthak soldier struck him down with the butt of an energy weapon. Pete Morrison fell to the ground and did not get up again. "Dad!" Katie screamed and tried to run to him, but alien hands grabbed her arms and held her back. Supreme Overlord Zethkri stepped forward from the ranks of his soldiers. He was tall even for a Vorthak, with scarred gray skin and cold yellow eyes that seemed to look right through the humans cowering before him. "You have discovered something you were not meant to see, young human," he said in perfect English, his voice like grinding stone. "This is most unfortunate." Katie lifted her chin and glared at him. "You're murderers, all of you." Several colonists gasped at her boldness. Nobody spoke to a Vorthak overlord that way. Zethkri studied her for a long moment. "You have spirit. That will make your punishment more instructive to others. You will come with us to the Imperial capital. Your execution will be broadcast across our empire as a lesson about the price of defiance." As the soldiers dragged Katie toward their ships, she looked back one last time at the colony that had been her home. Smoke rose from burning buildings. Bodies lay scattered in the streets. Her father's still form lay where he had fallen. She did not know that her death would spark something that would bring down an empire. She only knew that she was not afraid. The Imperial Colosseum on the Vorthak homeworld could hold 2 million spectators. Today, every seat was filled. Beings from across the galaxy had come to witness what Supreme Overlord Zethkri called a demonstration of Imperial justice. Katie Morrison stood in the center of the vast arena, chains around her wrists and ankles. The metal was cold against her skin, but she refused to shiver. She would not give these creatures the satisfaction of seeing her fear. 24 hours had passed since her capture. 24 hours in a dark cell with nothing but stale water and moldy bread. 24 hours to think about her father lying dead in the colony square. 24 hours to understand that she was going to die today. But Katie was not thinking about death. She was thinking about Lisa Chen. Lisa had been her best friend since childhood. They had grown up together on Kepler 442b, sharing dreams about seeing other worlds and having adventures among the stars. Lisa was smart with computers and machines. She had gotten a job in the colony's communications center when she turned 18. Lisa had also escaped the attack on the colony. Katie did not know this for certain, but she hoped. Lisa was clever and quick. If anyone could have gotten away when the Vorthaks attacked, it would be Lisa. And if Lisa was alive, she would be watching this broadcast. The thought gave Katie strength. Supreme Overlord Zethkri stepped forward onto a raised platform where everyone could see him. His voice boomed across the Colosseum, amplified by alien technology. "Citizens of the Vorthak Empire," he began, "today you witness the fate of those who dare to oppose our righteous rule. This human child discovered secrets she was not meant to know. She defied imperial authority. She showed disrespect to her betters." The crowd of aliens murmured and clicked their approval. Many species in the galaxy feared the Vorthaks. They had built their empire through conquest and intimidation. Public executions like this were meant to keep subject races in line. "Let this human's death serve as a warning to all who would challenge the empire," Zethkri continued. "Let it be seen across 1,000 worlds. Let it be remembered for 1,000 years." What Zethkri did not know was that his broadcast was reaching more worlds than he intended. Far across space, on a small transport ship fleeing the ruins of Kepler 442b, Lisa Chen sat hunched over a jury-rigged communications console. She had barely escaped the colony attack, stowing away on an automated cargo hauler just as the Vorthak ships began their assault. For 24 hours she had worked without sleep, using every trick she had learned about Imperial communication systems. The Vorthaks used quantum-encrypted signals for their broadcasts, nearly impossible to hack or redirect. Nearly, but not completely. Lisa's fingers flew over the controls as she rerouted the execution broadcast. Instead of going only to Vorthak worlds, the signal now reached every human settlement, ship, and station within 100 light-years. It reached Earth itself, traveling through the vast network of communication relays that connected human space. On Luna Base, Dr. Nathan Brooks was reviewing research data when the emergency broadcast interrupted his work. The normally calm scientist felt his blood turn cold as he watched Katie Morrison stand defiantly before her executioners. Aboard the exploration vessel Aurora, Captain Ryan Mitchell called his entire crew to the main viewer. Scientists, engineers, and civilian researchers watched in horrified silence as the young human girl faced down an empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. On Mars Colony, in the asteroid mining stations, aboard the Deep Space Research platforms, millions of humans stopped what they were doing and watched. They watched as Katie Morrison, a 16-year-old girl from a mining colony most of them had never heard of, stood up to the most powerful empire in known space. Back in the Colosseum, Katie felt the weight of countless eyes upon her, not just the aliens in the stands, but somehow she sensed others watching. Her own people, her own species. She stood a little straighter. "Do you have any last words, human?" Zethkri asked, his voice dripping with contempt. Katie looked up at him. Then she looked around the vast Colosseum at the thousands of alien faces watching her. Finally, she looked directly into the broadcast camera that would carry her words across the galaxy. "My name is Katie Morrison," she said, her young voice steady and clear. "I am from Earth. I am human. You can kill me, but you cannot make me. Kneel." A strange silence fell over the Colosseum. Even some of the alien spectators seemed moved by the girl's quiet courage. This was not how condemned prisoners usually behaved. They begged for mercy. They cried. They broke. This human child did none of those things. "You will kneel," Zethkri snarled, gesturing to his guards. Two Vorthak soldiers moved toward Katie, raising their weapons to force her down. Katie looked at them calmly. "No," she said simply. "I will not." The soldiers struck her with energy, weapons, sending waves of pain through her body. Katie fell to one knee, then forced herself back to her feet. They struck her again. Again she rose. On distant worlds, humans watched with growing amazement and fury. This girl, this child, was showing courage that veteran soldiers would envy. She was showing them what it meant to be human. Dr. Emma Rodriguez, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, watched from her office in Geneva. She had studied dozens of species across the galaxy. She had seen courage before, but nothing like this. Nothing that reached across space and touched the hearts of an entire species. "Execute her," Zethkri commanded, his patience exhausted. The execution squad raised their weapons. Katie Morrison stood straight and tall, looking not at them but at the camera, looking at her people. "Remember," she whispered, just loud enough for the broadcast to pick up. "Remember who we are." The energy beam struck her. Katie Morrison, age 16, mining colony worker, daughter of Pete Morrison, best friend of Lisa Chen, died as she had lived, standing up. But as her body fell to the arena floor, something else was rising across human space. Something that would make the Vorthak Empire regret this day for the rest of its very short existence. The broadcast ended. The Colosseum erupted in alien cheers. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. The moment Katie Morrison died, something woke up in humanity that had been sleeping for thousands of years. Dr. Emma Rodriguez felt it first. Sitting in her office in Geneva, watching the broadcast end, she experienced what she later described as a hand reaching into my mind and connecting me to everyone. The sensation lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. Around the world, humans stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. They did not understand why, but they all felt it, the connection, the awakening, the sudden knowledge that they were not alone in their anger. On the Lunar Research Station, Dr. Nathan Brooks was examining mineral samples when the feeling hit him. Every human on the base, nearly 300 people, felt it at the same time. They looked at each other with wide eyes, knowing without words that something fundamental had changed. Did you feel that? His assistant, Dr. Mary Williams, asked quietly. Nathan nodded. We all did. And they had. Every human being in the solar system, on Earth, on Mars, in the asteroid belt, aboard the deep space stations, felt the same moment of connection. Scientists called it impossible. Psychologists had no explanation for it. Religious leaders called it divine intervention. They were all wrong. It was something much simpler and much more dangerous. It was evolution. Captain Ryan Mitchell commanded the exploration vessel Aurora, 3 weeks out from Earth on a routine survey mission. His crew of 45 had been mapping star systems and looking for new worlds suitable for human colonization. It was peaceful work, the kind Ryan had chosen after leaving military service. But as the broadcast of Katie Morrison's execution ended, Ryan felt something change in his mind. Not just in his mind, but in the minds of every human on his ship. Suddenly he could sense their emotions, their thoughts, their unified rage at what they had witnessed. Captain, his navigator, Lieutenant Amy Foster, said quietly, "We need to go home." Ryan looked around the bridge. Every face showed the same expression, determination mixed with anger, purpose mixed with fury. They had work to do. Set course for Earth, Ryan ordered. Maximum speed. Similar scenes played out on every human ship in space. The merchant vessel Pegasus, carrying supplies to the outer colonies. The research ship Galileo, studying distant pulsars. The passenger liner New Horizon, taking families to establish a new settlement on Kepler 186f. All of them turned around and headed home. But home was not their destination. Home was just where they would gather their strength. On Mars Colony, President Maria Santos had been in a meeting with agricultural specialists when the broadcast interrupted. She watched Katie Morrison die with growing horror and rage. But when the awakening hit, when she felt the sudden connection to every human consciousness in the system, she knew exactly what had to be done. Cancel all civilian projects, she ordered her staff. Convert every manufacturing facility to military production. We go to war. Ma'am, with respect, we don't have a military, her defense minister pointed out. We have security forces and survey ships. The Vorthak Empire has ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. Maria Santos looked at him with eyes that seemed to burn. We have something better than a military. We have humanity. And humanity just woke up. The transformation began immediately. On Earth, factories that had been making household goods suddenly retooled to produce weapons and spacecraft. Mining operations that had been extracting materials for construction projects began forging armor and hull plating. But the real change was not in the machines. It was in the people. Jake Harrison had escaped the destruction of Kepler 442b with a handful of other survivors. They had commandeered a small transport ship and fled into deep space, planning to find other human colonies and warn them about the Vorthak betrayal. But when the awakening hit, Jake felt something incredible. He could sense other human minds across the galaxy. Not clearly, not like reading thoughts, but enough to know they were there, enough to coordinate with them. Felt Lisa Chen's presence aboard her stolen cargo ship. He felt the determination of Captain Mitchell and his crew. He felt the fury of every human who had watched Katie die. And somehow, impossibly, they all felt him too. Lisa, he said into his communicator, though he had no way to reach her ship. Can you hear me? 3 star systems away. Lisa Chen looked up from her communications console with tears in her eyes. I hear you, Jake. We all hear each other now. The network was not telepathy, exactly. Scientists would later determine that human brains had evolved a kind of quantum entanglement during their development on Earth. The emotional trauma of watching Katie Morrison's execution had activated this dormant ability on a species-wide scale. But at the time, all humans knew was that they were connected. They could feel each other's presence, share their determination, coordinate their actions in ways that should have been impossible. On the mining ship, Hercules, Captain Bob Taylor had been hauling asteroid ore to processing stations when the awakening occurred. His crew of 20 miners felt the change instantly. They looked at their mining equipment with new eyes. These laser drills could cut through starship hulls. His chief engineer, Steve Miller, observed quietly. These shaped charges could breach any armor, added explosives expert Helen Davis. Captain Taylor smiled grimly. Then we're not miners anymore, we're soldiers. Across human space, the same realization was occurring. Every tool could be a weapon, every ship could be a warship, every human could be a warrior. The Vorthak Empire had made a critical error. They had assumed that because humans lacked a strong military, they were weak. They had assumed that because humans seemed peaceful, they would remain peaceful. They had never considered what would happen if you took a species that had evolved as persistence hunters, as pack animals, as problem solvers, and gave them a reason to hunt. Dr. Emma Rodriguez, working frantically at her research station, began to understand what was happening. The quantum field effect that connected human consciousness was growing stronger by the hour. What had started as a simple emotional connection was becoming something much more complex. Humans were beginning to think as one species while maintaining their individual personalities. They could coordinate without communication, plan without meetings, act without orders. They were becoming what military strategists called the perfect army. Unity of purpose with diversity of approach. Coordination without hierarchy. A million minds thinking as one, but each bringing their own skills and knowledge to the collective effort. President Santos addressed the United Earth Assembly 6 hours after Katie's execution. But she was not really speaking to Earth. She was speaking to every human in the galaxy. They wanted to show us the price of defiance, she said, her words carried by quantum entanglement to human minds across space. Instead, they have shown us the cost of submission. We will not submit. We will not kneel. And we will not forget. On distant worlds in deep space, aboard ships and stations throughout the galaxy, humans nodded in unison. The message was received. The decision was made. The Vorthak Empire had killed one human girl to terrify billions into submission. Instead, they had awakened something that would destroy them. 20 minutes after Katie Morrison died, the impossible began to happen. Admiral John Parker commanded Earth's home defense fleet from the bridge of the battleship Constitution. It was a small force, only 30 ships designed mainly to protect Earth from asteroids and space debris. Earth had never needed a real military because the Vorthak Empire provided protection from hostile aliens. That protection had just revealed itself as a lie. Admiral, we're receiving movement reports from across the system, his communications officer reported. Every human ship in space is changing course. John looked at the tactical display with growing amazement. Merchant vessels, research ships, passenger liners, mining craft, even small personal yachts were all heading toward predetermined coordinates. Nobody had given orders. Nobody had sent communications. Yet somehow every human pilot knew exactly where to go and what to do. It's like watching a flock of birds turn, his tactical officer, Commander Patricia Stone, whispered. They all move, together without any visible signal. The Admiral felt it too, the connection that linked every human mind in space. Through it, he could sense the determination of Captain Ryan Mitchell approaching from the outer system. He could feel the rage of the mining crews who had turned their ships into weapons. Most of all, he could feel the unified purpose that drove them all. 300 human vessels converged on Earth in perfect formation, their crews working with impossible coordination. Passenger liners had been converted to troop transports. Cargo ships now bristled with improvised weapons. Research vessels carried newly manufactured warheads and targeting systems. But the real miracle was not the ships. It was the people. Dr. Nathan Brooks had spent his entire career studying mineral compositions and planetary geology. But when the awakening hit, knowledge flowed through the quantum network that connected human minds. Suddenly, Nathan found himself understanding starship engineering, weapons systems, and military tactics as if he had studied them for years. On Mars colony, factory worker Tom Johnson discovered he could program manufacturing robots to build fusion warheads, even though he had never seen a warhead before. The knowledge came from Dr. Sarah Kim, a weapons specialist on Europa, shared through the network that now linked all human consciousness. Across the solar system, Humans found themselves capable of things they had never learned. A pastry chef became an expert in explosives. A musician learned to pilot a fighter craft. A teacher understood complex military strategy. The network was sharing more than emotions now. It was sharing knowledge, skills, and experience across the entire species. Admiral Parker felt the change in himself as well. Information flowed into his mind from hundreds of sources. Ship design from engineers on Titan, combat tactics from retired military officers on Mars, strategic planning from political leaders on Earth. All ships, this is Admiral Parker, he broadcast to the growing fleet. Prepare for jump to Vorthak space. He did not need to give detailed orders. Every captain, every crew member, already knew their role in the plan that was forming in the collective human consciousness. It was not his plan, or anyone's individual plan. It was humanity's plan, created by millions of minds working as one. Captain Ryan Mitchell brought the Aurora into formation with the main fleet. His exploration ship now carried enough firepower to level a city, converted in mere hours by his crew working with supernatural efficiency. Captain, his engineer Dr. Alan Wright reported, "The quantum field effects are getting stronger. I'm reading human consciousness signatures from all across the galaxy." Ryan nodded. Through the network, he could sense humans on distant worlds, preparing their own responses to Katie's murder. Jake Harrison, gathering survivors from destroyed colonies. Lisa Chen, coordinating with resistance groups on Vorthak worlds. Thousands of others, all connected, all working toward the same goal. The Vorthak Empire was about to learn what happened when you unified humanity against a common enemy. On the Vorthak homeworld, Supreme Overlord Zethkri was receiving reports from across his empire. Minor disturbances on several worlds. Communication blackouts in some sectors. Nothing that seemed particularly concerning. "My lord," his intelligence chief reported, "we are detecting unusual movement in human space. Many of their ships appear to be gathering near Earth." Zethkri waved dismissively. "Probably some primitive mourning ritual for the executed child. Humans are known for their emotional reactions. It will pass." The Overlord had no way of knowing that human ships were not just gathering near Earth. They were gathering everywhere. Every human vessel in the galaxy was moving with perfect coordination toward Vorthak targets. Captain Bob Taylor's mining ship Hercules arrived at the Vorthak supply depot on Rigel 7th to find it defended by a single patrol craft. Through the quantum network, Bob knew that similar mining ships were approaching similar targets across Vorthak space. "Hercules to depot control," Bob transmitted in perfect Vorthak language. The network had shared Lisa Chen's linguistic knowledge with every human who needed it. "Requesting permission to dock for equipment maintenance." "Permission granted," came the reply. The Vorthaks had no reason to suspect a human mining ship. As the Hercules docked, Bob and his crew moved with military precision they had never possessed before. Their mining equipment, converted to weapons, cut through the depot's defenses like paper. The Vorthak guards never had time to send a distress signal. Similar attacks were happening simultaneously across the Empire. Humans who had been slaves on Vorthak worlds suddenly found themselves with knowledge of their oppressors' weaknesses. Workers who had built Vorthak ships knew exactly how to destroy them. Servants in Vorthak palaces became assassins in the night. The network allowed perfect coordination across impossible distances. As one human strike team succeeded, their tactical knowledge instantly became available to all the others. When another team encountered a new type of Vorthak defense, the solution spread through human consciousness in seconds. Dr. Emma Rodriguez, monitoring the quantum field effects from her laboratory on Earth, watched in fascination as humanity transformed before her eyes. The species that had been peaceful explorers and colonists was becoming something far more dangerous. "We're witnessing evolutionary acceleration," she reported to President Santos. "The quantum entanglement is allowing humans to share not just information, but actual cognitive abilities. We're becoming something new." What they were becoming was a weapon, a species-wide weapon aimed at the heart of the Vorthak Empire. Jake Harrison's small group of survivors had grown into an army. Humans across Vorthak space were abandoning their lives as slaves and colonists, joining the growing resistance with knowledge and skills they had never possessed before. Jake, Lisa Chen's voice came through both radio and quantum network. I've identified the location of the main Vorthak fleet. They're massed around their home world, but they don't know we're coming. Through the network, Jake could sense the vast human fleet approaching through hyperspace. Admiral Parker's forces from Earth, Captain Mitchell's converted exploration ships, hundreds of mining vessels and cargo haulers turned into instruments of war. But more than that, he could sense the fury that drove them all. The memory of Katie Morrison, standing defiant in the face of an empire, the knowledge of what the Vorthaks had done to human colonists, the determination to ensure it never happened again. 23 minutes had passed since Katie's execution. The Vorthak Empire still believed it was in control. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 27 minutes after Katie Morrison died, the Vorthak Galactic Empire ceased to exist. Supreme Overlord Zethkri first learned something was wrong when his palace guards failed to respond to routine check-ins. He tried to contact his military commanders and found only silence. Emergency broadcasts from across his empire told of coordinated attacks, slave revolts, and impossible human victories. How is this possible? He demanded of his remaining advisors. The humans have no military. They have no coordination. They are scattered across 1,000 worlds. But humanity was no longer scattered. Through the quantum network that connected every human mind, they had become something the galaxy had never seen before. A single organism spread across space, thinking with millions of brains but moving with one purpose. Admiral John Parker's fleet dropped out of hyperspace in the Vorthak home system to find chaos waiting for them. The mighty Imperial Navy, which had ruled the galaxy for centuries, was burning. Report, Parker ordered. Sir, I'm reading massive explosions throughout the Vorthak fleet. His tactical officer replied with amazement. It looks like their own ships are attacking each other. Through the quantum network, Parker understood what was happening. Humans who had worked as slaves and servants on Vorthak vessels had struck simultaneously. Using knowledge shared through the network, they had sabotaged engines, disabled weapons, and turned the Empire's own technology against itself. Captain Ben Taylor, whose mining crew had started this phase of the assault, felt a savage satisfaction as he watched a Vorthak dreadnought tear itself apart. The human slaves who had built that ship knew exactly which support beam to weaken, which power coupling to overload, which computer system to corrupt. All human vessels. This is Admiral Parker. He broadcast to the growing fleet. Primary objectives are the command centers and communication hubs. We end this today, but the end had already begun across the galaxy. On Altair Prime, Commander Jake Harrison led a force of liberated human slaves against the regional Vorthak headquarters. They moved with perfect coordination, each person knowing their role without need for orders. The Vorthak defenders, accustomed to fighting disorganized rebels, found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to predict their every move. How do they know our tactical plans? A Vorthak officer demanded as human forces struck at exactly the right moment to avoid his ambush. The answer was simple. Dr. Sarah Kim, who had worked as a translator in the Vorthak Command Center for 2 years, shared her knowledge through the network. Every human fighter knew the layout of Vorthak facilities, their security protocols, their defensive strategies. Lisa Chen, coordinating the resistance from her hidden ship, felt the victory unfolding across space. Through the quantum network, she experienced every battle, every liberation, every moment of triumph as humans across the galaxy struck back against their oppressors. Katie, she whispered, knowing her friend could not hear. We remembered. We remembered who we are. On the Vorthak homeworld, Captain Ryan Mitchell led his converted exploration ship through the planet's defenses. The mighty orbital fortresses that had protected the Empire's capital for millennia fell to weapons that should not have been able to breach their shields. But human mining lasers, focused through crystalline lenses stolen from Vorthak research facilities, proved capable of cutting through any armor. Human explosives, made from materials found in any asteroid belt, created fusion reactions that rivaled military warheads. "Landing parties, prepare for deployment," Ryan ordered. His crew, scientists and researchers just days before, moved with military precision toward the planet's surface. They were not the only ones. Across the Vorthak Empire, human slaves were breaking their chains and seizing control. On industrial worlds and research facilities aboard warships and government centers, humans were rising up with perfect timing and impossible knowledge. Dr. Emma Rodriguez, monitoring the quantum field from Earth, watched humanity's transformation reach its peak. The network that connected human consciousness was allowing real-time sharing of information, skills, and tactical knowledge across galactic distances. "We've become something new," she reported to President Maria Santos. "Not just humans anymore, but humanity itself, made manifest. What they had become was unstoppable." Supreme Overlord Zethkri made his final stand in the Imperial Palace, surrounded by his personal guard. Through the vast windows of his throne room, he could see human ships landing in the capital city. The empire he had inherited from 1,000 generations of predecessors was collapsing around him. "My lord," his last remaining aide reported, "we are receiving surrender offers from across the empire. Every world, every system, every fleet, they are all falling to the humans." But the humans were not alone. The broadcast of Katie Morrison's execution had horrified more than just humanity. Across the galaxy, species that had lived under Vorthak oppression for centuries saw the courage of one human girl and found their own courage awakened. "Sir, we're receiving communications from the Zentari Rebellion," Admiral Parker's communications officer reported. "They're offering alliance against the Vorthaks." "And the Alteran Resistance Movement," added another officer. "The Rigelian Freedom Fighters. The Andromedan Liberation Front. Everyone who ever suffered under Vorthak rule is rising up." Katie Morrison's death had not just awakened humanity. It had awakened hope across the galaxy. The palace doors burst open as human soldiers poured into Zethkri's throne room. They were led by Jake Harrison, the colony defense commander who had failed to save Katie, but had succeeded in saving her people. "Supreme Overlord Zethkri," Jake said formally, "by the authority of the free beings of this galaxy, you are under arrest for crimes against sentient life." The former overlord looked at the humans surrounding him. These were not the weak, scattered colonists he had despised. These were something else, something united, something dangerous. "How?" he asked simply. Jake smiled grimly. "You wanted to make an example of Katie Morrison. You wanted to show the galaxy what happens to those who defy you. Instead, you showed them what happens when you make humanity angry." As Zethkri was led away in chains, Captain Ben Taylor's voice came through the quantum network to every human in the galaxy. "Kepler 442b is free," he reported from the ruins of Katie's home colony. "The Vorthaks who murdered our people are dead or captured. Katie Morrison's death has been avenged. But it was more than vengeance. It was transformation." Dr. Emma Rodriguez released her final report on the quantum network phenomenon 3 days later. Humanity had not just won a war, they had evolved. The species that had once been scattered across space as individual colonies and ships had become something unprecedented. They had become one people, united by bonds that transcended distance and time. The network that connected human consciousness would fade over the following months, but the memory of unity would remain. Humanity would never again be divided against itself. President Maria Santos spoke from the ruins of the Imperial Palace on the Vorthak homeworld, addressing not just humanity but all the species of the galaxy. "Katie Morrison died believing in something simple," she said, "that no being should be forced to kneel. That courage matters more than power. That standing up for what is right is worth any price." The new galactic government that formed in the following months was built on those principles. Not human dominance, but cooperation. Not empire, but alliance. Not conquest, but liberation. And in the center of the new capital, on a world that had once been the heart of tyranny, they built a simple monument. A statue of a young girl, standing straight and tall, looking up at the stars. The inscription read simply, Katie Morrison. Age 16, she would not kneel. The Vorthak Empire had executed her live, broadcast across the galaxy, believing it would break human spirit. Instead, it had taken exactly 27 minutes for that empire to fall, and humanity had learned something about itself that it would never forget. When they stood together, they could move worlds. When they fought as one, they could topple empires. When they remembered who they were, nothing in the universe could make them kneel.